Hi guys, I'm going to have to give a small introduction to this one. I was talking on the comments to a couple of my subs the other day about doing a bottle opener. One of them said, yeah, great idea because I'm having trouble making the punch the right size. And I said, well actually I don't think the punch has got anything to do with it because you can tickle about with it on the anvil afterwards and get the size right. And left it at that. And then thinking about it afterwards, he was absolutely right. If you can make a punch that makes the hole damn near the right size to start with, you can knock these things out, forever. So I got thinking about it, which didn't actually take that long because I came up with something very, very simple. And all it is a piece of inch by half inch, which I've been using as a punch for ages, or a drift. You can see I've been knocking it about, but all I did was draw it down to about half inch at the bottom by quarter, and that's what it was when it was a punch. But what I did then was stick it on the belt sander and just went round and round and round on the belt sander until I got sort of a nice rounded square shape. I don't think you can actually see the profile from here, but if you cut it in half it would be nice rounded edges on a sort of a rectangle. So that's basically it. That gives you the basic hole. But to make it an all-round sort of tool, what else I've done is left a nice sharp flat at the back here. This back edge is sharp, I don't know if you can see it there. And then the front edge here I've rounded off. Just brought that right round there. Quite steep, not too bad. And the edges, each side. So that all but the back edge is fairly smooth. And that sharp edge goes to make the, I suppose you call it like a tongue on the bottle opener. If you were going to do millions of these, you'd probably want to do it out of a bit of chisel or something like that. But this is just mild steel, and you can knock out quite a few with this before it starts to deteriorate. But if you're going to do loads, you'd probably want to use something a bit tougher. But there, that's all it is. So let's get some tools together and we'll give it a go. Right, what I'm going to use for this, along with the stuff, this is a bit of 7/8 by 3/16. Quite an unusual size. I don't know where it came from, but I've got bits of it lying about. Probably came from another sale. That's what I'm going to use. To help me is this, just an ordinary punch made out of an Allen wrench. It's the one I use for punching stud holes in my shoes when I'm making shoes. That's going to be the first hole. And this one is another Allen wrench, but it's a square one, and I again use for shoeing. I use it as a bob punch. And this one I'm going to put through after the original punch to just open it up enough to get the one I've just made, this one, through. So let's get this bit hot and we can rock and roll. Won't take long to heat up this because it's pretty thin. I'm just going to take the corners off. You don't have to, but it's just round the corners off slightly, and then I'm going to punch through the middle. Now you must get it in the middle, as near as you can anyway, because if you don't, when you drift it open, you're going to end up with a fat bit one side and a thin bit the other. Now this doesn't really work very well. The punch is a bit blunt. I should have sharpened it before I started, so the little noggin hasn't punched straight out. But it doesn't matter. You're not being judged, you're not in a competition, you're not doing an exam. And that's it, it should knock out now. Yeah, not very tough. There you go. So that's your start. So now we've got to get it warm and drift it open a bit bigger with the squarish rectangular one, just to make it big enough. So it doesn't take long to heat up because it's pretty thin. It's getting a bit warm, so I've got my glove on. Now I'm just going to put this through, and again, make sure you try and get it square so that you've got the widest part square with the top. Now this is going to be pretty tricky because you can see that it's distorting down into the hole quite badly, to the hardy hole. It's not a horrendous problem, but if you had a smaller hole on a swage block, you could use it, or you could probably make up a tool, but I'm just using the front and the back. You could make up a tool with 3 or 4 bits of, or 4 bits of square. You see that's just wide enough for that one to go in. So that's all it took. So we're going to get it warm and stick that one through now. Yeah, as I say, if you've got a swage block, or I'm just cooling that out because it's getting a bit warm to hold on to. Yeah, if you've got a swage block, or you can make up a little tool with 3 or 4 bits of square just to get it almost exact size. That'll stop the distortion when you're punching. Of course I'm too lazy, so I'm just moving it about. And we're going to have to do the same with this once we get this in. And so go to the front of the hardy hole, into the back. Just stops it distorting too much, although it's still going quite badly. It looks a bit of a mess, but actually it's not. So I've just turned it over, go back through again. You can see quite quickly how the hole is developing. You see, that's almost what we want. So we're going to just keep warming it up and tidying it up. I'm going to go up to probably, I don't know, what's that, 2 inches up. Obviously it depends on what size your tool is you've made, but that's what I'm going to do with mine. You don't want to go, and again it depends on the material as well. If you go too far you'll split it wide open. If you've got bigger material you can go further, but I think this will be enough for this bit of material. You want to thin it out a bit as well. See, that's just about, if it'll focus, come on, focus, 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 yeah, there we go, that's just about what you want. It's about just under an inch, no, it's probably about 7/8 wide, about ½ inch high, maybe just under, might go a little bit more, but you want to, say, keep it a little bit thinned out. It doesn't need, you know, it's not tearing off a great big lump, it's only pulling off a bottle cap for Christ's sake, so it doesn't have to be thick. So right, what are we doing now? Oh yeah, I'm going to hold it down with my hold down, if it works, whilst we use the other part of the tool to make the tongue. Let's see if we can get it to hold. Yep, that's got it this time. Now you want to use the sharp edge away from you, so the sharp edge wants to go towards the hole. And give it a couple of good bashes, so you're actually forcing out a little piece of material. And you can see there what it's done. It's just pushed out a nice little piece. Again, if I can get it to focus. Yeah, just about. There you go. It needs a bit of tidying up, but that's basically it. And that's the bit that will grip underneath the bottle cap. I'm just going to tidy it up a bit more and thin it out So I shall probably just tap it a bit more around the front there, just because there's a little bit of a not burr, I can't think of the word. There's a bit of a lump anyway, which I shall thin out. You've got to be careful, keep an eye on it, because it will get hot very quickly, because it's now quite thin. Again, thinning it out a little bit more, keeping the back nice and flat. Now I'm just going to, like I say, try and just bring the punch forward a little bit onto that lump. I obviously didn't have it quite far enough forward when I initially made my hammer, or my indentation. So you can see now if it'll focus. It's quite thin. Come on, focus, focus, focus. Yeah, it's quite thin. Down to, I don't know, just under 1/8 at the very end. Flat on the back. You see it's sort of gone rounded now, but I'm going to square that off with a file and tidy up the edge there. You don't have to do that with on the anvil. It's so much easier. Just get it on the grinder, because now you've achieved the almost ideal shape. You don't want to muck it up by messing about trying to lose that bit. It's so much easier. Just get it on your belt grinder or even angle grinder. Or if you haven't got either, you can even do it with a file. Just take that excess off the front there. And that is almost your finished item. Obviously we're going to tidy it up, but there's not an awful lot to do with that. So what I'm going to do now is just square that tongue off with a little file. Got it up in the vise, and I'm literally just going to run this, so it's a very fine file. Just run it across the top there. Trying to keep it square in both directions, which it's not there, so it must come this way a little bit more. And that's probably not quite, a little bit more. I'm being a bit fussy. There you go, that's just nicely squared that top off. And that really is it. It's going to catch your bottle nicely, your bottle cap. I'm going to tidy it all up, obviously, clean it up with the wire brush, round off all these edges so there's nothing sharp. But essentially, it's job done. And as long as you get that little tongue right, you can knock out one after another, hopefully. Nothing sharp there. I'm going to cut this off because I don't quite know what I'm going to do with it, so I'm going to cut it off about, I don't know, 3 inches, something like that, and see what we can make on the other end. Right, so I've cut it off. It's probably a bit longer than 3 inches, probably about 4 inches overall. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with it, but either way I need a good pair of tongs that will hold it, and these are decent pair of flat tongs. And we're going to stick it in and probably just narrow it out to start with. I think I've got an idea of what I'm going to do now, but I'm really not sure. It's one of those things, it's sort of, you start drawing it out and things appear in your mind as you're doing it. And I think we'll probably do something fairly traditional, basically because I've not got much of an imagination. I'm sure someone will say, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that, but this is what we're going to do to start with. Now, you don't want to get the business end that you've just made too hot, because you don't want to distort it. So work on the far end first without getting the business end too hot. See, it's coming down fairly quickly because it's quite light material, but I want to get it hot a bit further up here, but I'm going to have to cool out the ring end so it doesn't distort. I don't want to ruin all the work I've already done. So now this is quite thin, it doesn't take long, so keep an eye on it. Because this is quite thick up the business end, what I'm going to do is thin it down a little bit more than normal over the beak. You see that's coming down. I'm just going to cool it out because it's getting a bit warm. Then we put it back in the fire and that will heat up less rapidly. So I'm going to put it over the beak next time there and try and thin it out further back. I'm going to do this so that there's less of a taper, or more of a taper, less of a taper. Anyway, using the rounded part of the hammer now. So that we don't damage up by the business end. You can see probably. Let's keep it straight. Thin it out again. I think you can see what I mean by more of a taper or less of a taper. So it's steeper up by the opener end. You can get the idea. Try and keep it level, as level as you can, because it always makes it easier to finish it off. Everything's getting a bit warm. There you go, you can see how it's coming down. I probably won't do much more than that thinning wise. I might do a touch, but just going to again cool out the business end and stick it back in. Cool it out. You can see that's it, you can see very well there what I've done. So you can hang on to it quite solidly without fear of damaging it. And if you hung on to that whilst that was red hot, even with plain flat tongs, you'd end up marking it and possibly distorting it. That's probably near what I'm going to leave it. I'm going to put a little curl on that end and then curl it back on itself, I think. I can't quite think what else to do with it. That's the idea that's developed whilst I've been drawing it out. So just put the little tiddly turn on the end. Very gently does it because it's now quite thin on that end. You see there, if it will focus, just a little twirl on the end. Again, I'm going to cool that out because that's going to get hot very quickly when you put it back in the fire, being thin. So I'm going to warm it up a bit more gently now, although it still heats up pretty quickly. Cool out the point so I can hit it if I want to. without damaging it. Just pull it back on itself. There you go, just straighten out the bottom. I'm pulling it back as I'm doing it. That's pushing it towards me. That closes it up. You only need very, very light blows with this because it's very easy to manipulate. And that's sort of all I'm going to do. Only because I've got no idea what else to do and I just wanted to make something. So I'm going to cool it out, clean it up with a wire brush like I normally do, and we'll have a little look at it. So it's nothing special. I haven't spent much time on it at all, so there's lots of hammer marks, but we'll clean it up anyway. Right, I've given it a clean up, wire brush, and on the old buffing wheel a little bit, but you can see it's still very rough. Lots of marks in it. I could have spent a lot more time on it, but as usual, shorter time. But it just gives you an idea. It was the business end really that I wanted to show you, and that tool. And I think you'll find that although I haven't got a bottle with me, that will open a bottle fairly easily. Now it's up to you what you put on the other end of it. It's nice and smooth, no rough edges, and that nice sharp edge there hopefully will grip under the bottle, or the cap should I say, and whip it off. And as I haven't got a bottle here, I'll take it home and hopefully I'll find one there and I can give you a quick demo. Right, we got home, I found myself a bottle, and just to show you, I haven't done anything to it since I got home or since I left the workshop, and there you go. Away you go. Cheers. So, Mr. J Sauer, I hope that ticks all the boxes for you.